you know that you're a unique human being and no one has the same DNA as you? This means that you are one of a kind. And remember, body image is who you are on the inside, not the outside. Whatever you want to be, if you say it every day to yourself, you will become it. Okay? One of the things we need to stop doing is the negative self-talk. We need to stop that. So what is self-esteem? Self-esteem is the disposition to experience oneself as being competent to cope with the basic challenges of life and be worthy of happiness. All of us are worthy of happiness. Never think you're not worthy of happiness. Okay? It is a particular way of experiencing the self, and the self is what's inside of you. Okay? Self-esteem is grounded in reality. Now, we all have perception. Perception is your reality. Your perception of things makes your reality. Self-esteem cannot be induced by a drug, a compliment, or a love affair. It has to be developed over time. You must operate consciously, be self-responsible, and have high integrity. And this must be an ongoing thing you're doing every day. That alone in itself will help you get self-motivated. So what is low self-esteem? Now we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about low self-esteem. It is essentially the feeling of worthlessness. You're not good enough, and or other people are better than you. Okay? This causes physical, spiritual, emotional, and psychological problems which get in the way of your success. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get you to that point where you're successful all the time. The impact of low self-esteem, what do you think the impact of low self-esteem is? Let's look at it through the lens of understanding. The fear and anxiety that accompanies, it affects everything a person does, says, and thinks. They become underachievers, workaholics, people pleasers, or they become very passive, or they exhibit addictive behavior. And all of these are very negative things that will unrail your success. They may fear seeking new jobs. Well, I'm not going to get the job anyway. Okay, well, you're not because you said it. If you believe it, it's probably going to happen. Okay? Initiating new relationships. Oh, well, he or she's not going to like me anyway. Okay? It's the old saying, there is no try. There's only do or don't. Learning new skills. Avoid social settings and refrain from sharing their opinions. Your opinions are your opinions. It's how you see the world. Okay? Others get aggressive and angry. Also, they tend to self-sabotage. And this is something very common. And these are the people that they get to a point where they're becoming successful and they do something that sabotages the whole thing. And it all comes all undone. There we go. Okay. Where are we? All because of the fear or failure of success. Now this is interesting. People say a lot of times, well, I understand fearing failure, but success? Well, yeah, people fear success. And you know why? Because it's a change. We do not like change. We want things to stay the same. And really, if you think about it, the only thing that's constant is change. So we even fear success. So we have to embrace success. So how is low self-esteem formed? Too much criticism. All those people in your lives that are super critical, you need to get rid of them. They're not doing you any favors. They're not helping you. Okay? No affection, support, respect, or encouragement. You need to surround yourself by people who are for you. I always say you need to surround yourself with your biggest fans. One of the things I did when I was working on my doctoral degree is my brothers and my kids were my biggest fans. They were the ones that were saying, giving me encouragement and saying, Dad, you can do this, you got this. Those are the people you have to surround yourself with. The ones that are criticizing, you need to throw them to the curb. Verbal, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. That is a huge one. And that will drop your self-esteem unbelievably. Being ridiculed for thoughts or perceptions. Your thoughts and your perceptions are your thoughts and your perceptions. It's how you see the world. Many times it's not right or it's not wrong. It's just how you feel. It's okay having feelings. Lack of social skills. One thing I've learned in this world, you need social skills. Because no matter where you go, you're going to have to deal with people. And that's where the social skills come. And social skills can be learned, and it doesn't matter the age. You could be 8 years old or you could be 80. You can learn social skills. Okay? It takes practice. Okay? Some of the problems it causes is fear. Now, a lot of people say, oh, hate is the worst emotion. It's a bad one, but fear is the worst one. You know why? Because when we're fearful, we're at our worst. Every time. Every time. Anxiety. Anger. I don't have time to be angry. It's just too draining. I don't really get angry anymore because it's just too draining, man. And it's not worth it most of the time. Think about some of the things that you've been angry about in the past. And then I bet you're looking back on it now going, why did I get angry? Okay, panic attacks, dependence, codependency. Okay? You know who you should be dependent on? You. Because you're the one that's going to get it done. Okay? You're the one that's going to make it happen. Okay? Assertiveness. Okay? And it's not just assertiveness, it's aggressiveness. Okay? Depression. We live in a world right now where we have more depressed people ever. Okay? Eating disorders. Domestic violence, which you read about in the news, on the internet, every day. Addictive behaviors, relationship problems, social anxiety disorder and other anxiety problems, avoidant personality disorders, where we just avoid everybody. Dependent personality disorders, where you're just too codependent, you're too dependent on other people. It's okay to have people around you that you're dependent on and that help you and support you and things like that. But don't be codependent, okay? Be dependent on yourself, because like I said, in the final analysis, you are the one that's going to do it. And I love this Eleanor Roosevelt. She's one of my favorite people. She was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wife, one of the first ladies. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So here's the thing. Don't give them consent. Say no. No. Ways to change your view of you. Change your self-talk. And this is a big one. This negative self-talk that we all do, and we're all guilty of it at one point or another. Okay? I'm not good enough. I'm not good looking enough. I don't have the best clothes or the best car or whatever. You've got to stop that. You've got to stop that. Okay? You've got to look in the mirror every morning and say, I got this. I got this. So stop the self-negative talk. Model the person you want to be. Get a mentor. Someone who's already successful and done it. And ask them, how'd you do it? How'd you get there? Okay? I've had a couple mentors in my life, and that's the one big question I ask. How did you become the department director? What did you do? You know, how did you get your PhD? What did you do? It'll be very helpful. Don't be pessimistic. Life's too short to be pessimistic, man. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think things are going to be awful, what are they going to be? Awful. Absolutely. Every time. Every time. Or hang with negative, sarcastic people. Those people you got to let go. You got to let them go. Because they're not helping you. They're not helping you at all. Okay? Don't accept put-downs from other people, ever. You know, my daughters say whatever a lot. You know, but I understand why. Because that's the idea you have to have. Whatever. Okay? I'll be me. You be you. Okay? Don't accept put-downs from others. And if you have people in your lives that are putting you down all the time, you need to get rid of them. And it's a painful thing sometimes when you have to do that. Very painful. Because I've had to do it in my life. But I'm a much better person now because of it. Ways to change your view of you. When someone compliments, say thank you. Yeah. Don't say, I know. It doesn't work. Say thank you. Appreciate it. Those are some of the strongest words you can say is thank you and please. Surround yourself with positive influence and eliminate the negative ones. Out. Set achievable, realistic goals. Okay? And work to accomplish them. Find a mentor. And then copy it. Benchmark it. Avoid comparisons with others. You're you. You're unique. You're not like any other human being on the planet. Okay? So, that's what you need to do. Ways to change your view of you. Visualize changing yourself. Get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and go, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm going to be all right. I got this. Okay? People always ask me, Dr. B, how do you do these things? I make it up as I go. I call it the Indiana Jones School of Logistics. I'm making this up as I go. Practice random acts of kindness. Be kind to everybody. Okay? There's this thing called karma. If you give out good karma, guess what? Good karma comes back. You give out good bad karma, you're going to get bad karma back. It's just how life works. It's how the universe works. And have senseless acts of beauty. Help people. Help people. You help people, you help yourself. And you feel better. Coordinated action to improve your self-image. And that means, number one, getting rid of the negative self-talk. Number one, that's the first thing you need to do. And then getting rid of those negative, caustic people around you. Self-expression. Always have self-expression. Always. Something you do. Everybody has a hobby. My hobby is music. And that's kind of my outlet. Okay? Self-assertion. There's a difference between being assertive and aggressive. Aggressive means you're getting violent. Assertive means you know what you're doing, and other people realize that. Self-indulgence. My reward for this week is going to be Friday watching March Madness. Yep. Going to have me a steak and a beer. Self-realization. You know who you are. You know what you can do really well. And you know what you don't do very well. Okay? And then self-approval. Like yourself. And the way to like yourself is to be positive and help other people. And then, of course, self-love. You've got to love yourself before you can love anyone else. Healthy self-esteem. And this is how we gauge it, and this is how we do it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Miss Ileen.
Okay, so my name is Ms. Barreras. I've been at Southwest University for about 9 years. So I've been teaching at the university happy 9 years. So I'm going to start with the self-efficacy. So what is self-efficacy? Anybody know? Anybody want to respond to what is self-efficacy?
When you think you're actually worth something, like you are doing something for yourself.
That's a good one. Anybody else want to respond to that? Ms. Natalie? Self-efficacy. So let's get into it. So the definition, your judgment of your own capabilities to organize and execute courses of action required to attain a designated type of performance. So going into more elaborate type of experience, I'm more of a type of person that likes to give explanation as to experience. I think by experience you can actually engage an audience a lot more, because as an instructor, this is what we're doing. There's a lot of students that have never been in our shoes. They're going to the programs that they're currently in because they want to be where we're at. And they've never experienced it. They've never experienced being a health administrator. They've never experienced being a biller and coder. They've never experienced being a medical lab technician, which are the current programs that I'm currently teaching. So I teach it at both the associate's and the bachelor's level. So in order for me to keep my audience engaged, which is my students, is for me to give them perspectives of things that I've gone through in order for them to come down to the reality that it's not always going to be easy. And in order for us to be able to do this is by knowing this. So going into the role of self-efficiency. So self-efficacy Self-efficiency it plays a powerful role in the determining of the choices that you make, the effort to expand, how long you persevere in the face of challenge, the degree of anxiety, the confidence, your outcome, your expectations. So there's a slide here that I wanted to share with you all, which is this one right here. The influence of choice and behavior, the influence of effort, the influence of thoughts, patterns, the emotion, the reaction, the influence of self-confidence. So when I started here at Southwest University, it's a blessing. It's been a blessing for me to be here. But when I first started at Southwest University, I never actually applied to be here. It was just a random act that I ended up submitting my resume on Indeed. So when I ended up getting a call, it wasn't me that received the call. It was my mother. My mother received the call. Why? Because at the moment I was actually working at a gynecologist's office, and I just wanted to grow. I was right now going into my bachelor's degree in social work, and I wanted to work in that the dynamic of helping people to better themselves. So when I received the call from, so you all new to this, but I've been here, like I said, 9 years. It was Dr. Cardenas. My mother received the call, and she said, "Mija, a Dr. Cardenas called you, and he wants to interview you. And he said that he was stationed here at this location." So she didn't really get into details as to where I was supposed to be or but just the address. So as I was driving up and down the road, which is Geronimo, I kept passing a university, which was South Korea College. And I kept looking and looking. I was like, my mom got the wrong address. Granted, at the time that my mom got the information, my phone was disconnected. So that's why my mom was able to get that information, because on my resume, it had my mom's number, just in case things happen. So when I was going up and down the road, and I called my mom and I said, "Mom, it's a university." Well, at the time it was a career college. So I was like, "Mom, it's a college." And she said, "Well, that's what he said, for you to meet him there." So I said, "Okay." So as I walked in, I greeted the receptionists, which are always welcoming. And I walked into his office, and when I walked into his office, there was a platform on his desk of different sheets of papers. And I was looking down, I was reading everything as he was speaking to other people, but I was just glancing like, what is this? So I was looking at him as him being a physician. I really didn't understand that I was going to be interviewed to work as a teacher, as an administrator, or a biller code at the time. So as he looked at me, he turned around and he said, "So based on your resume, these are the classes that you can teach." I looked at him and I said, "Teach? Me? A teacher?" I said, "No." So I was like, no, I was thinking I was coming into this interview to be an administrator, to work for you as a doctor, as a physician. So he said, "No, this is a teaching position that you applied for." So I walked out of that interview with low confidence. So this is where I'm getting at. So when it comes to yourself and your being, when it comes to your motivation, your self-confidence, your abilities, sometimes you need that person to push you to the ability that you're not within yourself capable of doing. So I walked out of that interview and I told Dr. Cardenas that it was an honor to have been interviewed by him, that I appreciated the gesture, but that I didn't think that I was capable of teaching. So I walked out. I met with a friend. First I called my mother. And I told her, "What were you thinking?" She said, "This was a doctor. He just gave me the address and I thought this was in your realm." So I said, "Okay, Mom." So I met with a friend and he influenced me. If he believed in you in that moment, then why can't you believe in yourself now? So I said, wow, those are powerful words. So I called Dr. Cardenas within that same day and I said, "Okay, I'm interested." He's like, "Oh no, it's not up to me. You have a second interview." So I was like, oh my God, if the first one wasn't stressful enough, now the second one. So I met Ben Ariola. And when I interviewed with him, the same thing, I was going to come up with all these things to make me worthy of working at the university. And I said, no, I'm going to first build myself up with my self-esteem that was very low at the time, because again, I never thought that I could ever have the opportunity to teach at a university. And meeting Ben and him looking at me and telling me, you have the abilities if you believe in yourself. The only one stopping you is you. So that's when I was like, okay, now I understand when it comes to knowing the fact that at the moment, I didn't think that I was worthy enough, but here I am, 9 years later working at Southwest University. So you may not know me as an instructor, you may not have me right now as your instructor, but working at the university, we're here as a culture that, unfortunately, with everything that has been going on with the COVID, we have been disconnected, but though we're very connected behind the scenes. So just know that there's difficult times that you're going to encounter, and the only person that's going to continue to motivate you to be the person that you are is you. And I know that it's difficult, and this is why we have those outreach programs, so that we can motivate you. And we have this every 6 weeks. We have our end of term meeting for instructors, and what that basically is the same thing that you guys have within yourselves, is to bring yourself up, to gather yourself as to why you're in this university, why you're going to college, even if it's not in this university, just as to why you've decided to come to college. And it's not easy. It's never going to be easy. It wasn't easy for me, and it took me all this time to get to where I'm at. So just having those end of term, what we call it here at Southwest University for us instructors, so that we can continue to gather ourselves and to hear that positive feedback, to have our directors say, you have done this, you have motivated this, we've read your reviews, you're doing an awesome job. It's just, again, self-confidence that you have to have in order for you to continue doing what you're doing. So this is what this PowerPoint and this presentation is basically about, is success tends to rise self-efficiency, and failure tends to lower it. So set yourself for success. For me, when it comes to writing down the things that you think, so here, write down 10 things that are unique about you. Now write down 5 things in life that you want to do very well. I do this in my class quite often, and my students know that I'm so into the law of attraction. I don't know if you guys have ever seen or heard The Secret. So I live by The Secret. The Secret is a documentary that is basically explain the law of attraction. So when I was growing up, I grew up very, 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 very poor. But I always thought myself to be in a different position. I always thought that I was always going to live this life that eventually, by playing lottery tickets, that I was going to eventually achieve. But it's not the lottery. It's just yourself. Your lottery is you. So if you don't believe in your lottery, which is you, there's no way that you're going to be in that situation. So a story that's true, and I tell this to my students. There was one time I was dating, and we lived in a very, very poor neighborhood, and the guy that I was dating was very upper class, and when he found out where I lived for Valentine's Day, he said, I'm going to pick you up in a limo, but if you could please meet me at the corner of your house, which it was a stop sign, that would be great. And I was like, why? He said, it's a shorter, it costs money and it's by hour. And I was just within myself, I realized what he was getting at. So I said, okay. So in that corner house, it was a house. There was a trailer park neighborhood, but there was one house that I always idolized as a child when I would get to the corner of the stop sign, thinking one day that will be my house. So I pretended it was. So when he picked me up, his friends saw that I was coming out of the house, which I was just standing at the side of the stop sign, which is where the house was located. So they picked me up, they took me, we went, and we had a good time on our way back. they were going to drop me off. So they waited at the stop sign for me to go into that house that I pretended to live in. So as I walked into the house, I knocked on the door, and Mr. Juarez, which is the owner of the house, walked on. He's like, Ileen, is everything okay? I said, yes, just please let me in. And he was like, is everything? I said, please let me in. So he let me in, and I walked in, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And I told him the truth. I said, I pretended to live in your house because of, my friends. They didn't understand where I lived. And he was like, oh, you don't need to explain. So 20 years later, guess what house I bought? That house. So if you believe in where you're supposed to be, you will be there. It's just within yourself. I never believed I would be where I'm at right now. It was just the fact that everybody else believed in it, but me. And now having the position that I have as an instructor, I need to believe that every student that I have under my name believes the same thing that I, at the point, did not believe in me, that they now believe in themselves. So this is, again, why I'm at Southwest University, is to influence those individuals that have not been influenced by anybody else, but by us now. This is our purpose. So again, do what you love, and you will do it well and be rewarded. And the reward is self-gratitude in my perspective when it comes to what I'm doing and what I will continue to do. Plus, I still play the lottery, just in case. So this is where I turn it back to Dr. Baird.
Okay, I'm back. I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but I'm going to try, okay? Because that was amazing. Self-motivation techniques. This is one of the biggest problems that people have. And I've been teaching college for 22 years, and I see it all the time. So let's help you with some self-motivation techniques. Self-motivation is the most efficient way of improving your confidence and self-esteem. And as you get out into the corporate world, you're going to need this, because nobody's going to take your hand. That's for sure. Okay? Apart from giving you strength to achieve your goals, it brings about a change in your personality and character as well. Do you think I'm the same person I was 22 years ago? Not even. Not even. Even years ago, before I got my doctorate degree, no way. It changed me in remarkable ways, and for the good. Education is the key to everything. Secrets of self-motivation: set goals. Achievable goals. This is key. They've got to be achievable. When I do consulting, I see a lot of that in businesses. They set these sales goals, and I'm going, you're not going to increase your sales goals in 1 week 80%. That doesn't work. So make sure they're achievable. Get help. Stay focused. Stay focused on your goals. Stay focused on where you want to be. Have a plan. Everyone should have a 1-year plan and a 5-year plan. Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5? Okay? Do not procrastinate. Fastest way to lose your job? Well, there's a lot of fast ways to lose your job, but one of them is not meeting deadlines. Can you imagine if I was consistently late and turning in my grades every semester? Okay, now I've been here 6 years. I wouldn't be here 6 years. That's for sure. I know that. You've got to be able to meet deadlines. Share your goals with people. Tell them where you want to be. You know those people you surround yourself with that are positive and that are for you, and they're your biggest fans. You know a lot of times, and I'm going to tell you a story. I went to New York, and this is one of my favorite stories, and I presented at a conference. I did not know how many people were going to be at that conference. I did not stay at that particular hotel. So I took a cab, because you're in New York, and I went to the hotel where I was supposed to be, and I found my person that I was supposed to talk to, and she was like, oh no, come with me, we got you all set up and everything. Well, I did the worst thing you can do. I looked outside the curtain. I peeked, and there were so many people there. I was just like, oh my goodness. What do I do now? Now, these were educators. These were people with doctorate degrees who had been teaching for a really long time. Okay? And what I envisioned, well, I listened to some music because that always helps me. And I said, I'm going to envision that my kids are out there. And my goal is to make them proud. And that's what I did. So share your goals. And I shared that with my kids, and they were just blown away. Stay positive. Life's too short not to be. And normally what happens when you stay positive, positive things happen to you. Okay? Reward yourself. Again, reward yourself. It's key. I tell students, I don't teach college students studies very often, but every once in a while, I do. And I like teaching that class. It's a nice class. And I say, get a picture of something you want, put it on your refrigerator, and this whole time you're working on that bachelor's degree, every morning when you get up to go get your orange juice, okay, put your hand on that picture and go, oh yes, you will be mine. And I said, eventually, it'll happen. Stay away from negative self-talk. We've got to stop that. You've got to stop that. Guys, here's the thing. If you wake up every morning and you look in the mirror and you go, I'm poo-poo, you'll turn into it. That's just how it is. You'll convince yourself. If you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, I'm a terrible person, you'll turn into one. Because you'll convince yourself you're a terrible person. So you have to stop the negative self-talk. Oops. When you think you're not capable, you truly will not be good enough and you won't really be able to do a certain task. And this is the way I've worked for a really, really long time, from back in the days when I worked in hospitals, is when my boss would come to me and say, I need this. I went, okay, you got it. And then sometimes I walked away going, how am I going to do this? But you figure it out. That's what I learned very early in my career. You figure it out. So never, never turn anything down. Go, I got it. You'll figure it out. And if you need help, get help. If you can only understand thoroughly how you can work things out, you'll realize that it is so much better if you fill the mind with positive ideas in order to create positive reality. Think about positive reality. Positive reality means that you're positive, and positive reality breeds success. Ask yourself, what was I born to do? Many, many years ago, I taught my first class. It was on a Tuesday night. It was 22 years ago. It'll be 22 years ago in October. It was anatomy and physiology. I've done a lot of training, but I never taught a formal class in my life. But the director of education was desperate and needed a teacher. Okay? So I was it. I went and taught that 3-hour class, and I got in my truck that night and I went, this is what I was put on earth to do. And I made it happen. After that, I made it happen. And people kept telling me, well, you're going to need a master's degree. So I went and got a master's degree. And then they said, well, you're going to need a PhD. So I went and got a PhD. And here I am. And I love it. And then go do it. Go do it. Remember, if you're doing something every day you love, you never work a day in your life. Never work a day in your life. Oops. Okay. We both want to thank you so much for having us. And we hope you enjoyed it. And if you guys have any questions or concerns, please let us know.
Yes?
So I have a question. So you mentioned finding mentors. Can you maybe comment a little bit more on that? On like who you can choose as a mentor? Is there a limit on how many mentors you can have? And do you go and say, hey, can you be my mentor? Or how does that process work? Or what do you recommend for that?
Okay, so when it comes to mentors, I personally, when I was when I was currently in my master's degree, that was one thing that I associated with, is I got myself into a group of people that were going into the same degree that I was, and I surrounded myself with individuals that were in that same focus. And in order for you to achieve that goal, you have to have self-discipline. So if I were to give advice to those individuals when it comes to finding a mentor, is they're going to have to find individuals either in the same realm that they're in, if not people that have already achieved that goal and can give them motivation as to, there's only a certain amount of people that understand what is going on unless they've already gone through it. So I would not suggest, well, it's up to the individual, but I would suggest people to surround themselves with people that see the goal that they see themselves in 10, not even 5 years. I see now, with everything that's happening, 10 years from now. So when I got into the PhD program, when I was accepted into the PhD program, I asked for a mentor, and he's standing right here. And he was my mentor when he was at University of Phoenix. He was a dean. And I just saw him as a person that actually had gone through everything, could motivate me, to influence me, to keep me from going out of the realm of where I needed to be. So my feedback to that question as to how many people, I think as many as you can. Because there's always those individuals that have a negative effect, that they might have one comment that they can say to you that can stop you from wanting to do certain things. And it may not just be, it's not meant to be in a negative way, it's just the way that they feel. And that may not be the way that you are, so seek out somebody else's opinion. Again, the focus is to be with those individuals that are going for the same goal that you're attaining. That's my feedback. Dr. B, yours?
Well, I think in the past what I've done is I observed. It's kind of a qualitative thing. I observe people, and then I observe successful people, and then after a while I'm wondering, okay, how did they get to this position? How did they get there? What did they do? I want to be like them one day, and that's where I would go and ask them. I go, can you help me be a better manager, be a better leader, be a better respiratory therapist, be a better teacher? And I've had one almost every time. And actually, that was my father's suggestion. You know, when I first started working, he said, get a mentor. Find somebody that's successful and, you know, do what they did. And you'll be there. And that's what I've done.
Go ahead.
Okay. So there's something that actually I was really focused on that you mentioned was fear. And that's something that's very common, yet we don't actually are aware that we have fear when something comes. But, and we know that we have to overcome it in order to get to where we want to get. But how do we overcome fear? Because we know we have to overcome it, and that it's something that it's there, it's always there. It's an emotion that it's always there, it's constantly there. You can't, but how can you overcome it? Because you can't prevent it, but how can you overcome it with yourself?
Okay, so I can start off and then I'll...
Yeah, please.
So when it comes to fear, I think without even us acknowledging that we're overcoming it every single day, we need to acknowledge that. When you go to a restaurant, you're giving them, your fear is put aside, right? You're not thinking, is the vegetables to its par? Are they not bad food? Is it okay? So you're already giving somebody else the ability to make that judgment without you even knowing. The fear is not even there. So when you drive, when you're on an Uber, let's say that you're taking an Uber, you're giving that opportunity for somebody else to take initiative of something that you could be fearful of. You're never thinking that this person can actually crash the car. You're not fearing that. This is just from point A from point B that you want to get to. So there's a lot of things that we're currently doing that we're not even comprehending that these are things that we might be fearful of. College, for instance. We don't even understand the concept of it until we complete the whole program, that we've just put our whole future on somebody else's hands. But you don't see it until you complete it. So when it comes to fear, fear is always going to be there. It's just knowing and understanding that it's always going to be there, and how to overcome it just depends on that individual. And we have to be a little bit more general when it comes to fear. What is the fear that you're experiencing? And if there's a fear that there's something that we can overcome, that we can actually help and elaborate or counsel and give feedback and try to suppress the fear that you may have, that's our job as instructors. In trying to, when it comes to fears, the only things that I have encountered when it comes to students is, how am I going to overcome this exam? What's the fear behind that? I've been there personally. So the way that I tell my students is the only way that you can subside the fear, which what you can do is study, get into a group, build the confidence, but know that it's okay if you fail. It's just picking yourself up and redoing what you just started at the very beginning and keep on doing it. If I were to say, because of the fear that I have with where I'm at now, I would have never been here. I would have never thought I could be standing right here because of the fear that I had with everything that I had gone through and to where I'm at now. So you have to overcome that. So is fear ever going to be something that is not going to be existent, especially with our 2020? No. But it's just how you handle it and the people that you're around to make that subside, and just knowing that within yourself that you are capable of overcoming this. It's the self-confidence that you can overcome the fear. Dr. B?
I think it's a mental action game. It really is. When we're involved in new things, we're fearful at first, okay? And the thing that you have to start conditioning yourself for consistently is these 3 words: I got this. And then follow it with, I'll figure it out, okay? Because all my career I've been put in some pretty strange situations in business and in healthcare, and it was fearful. My first code blue. But talk about being scared for your life. I mean, being in that code blue and having literally somebody's life in your hands, and you're 18 years old, that was scary. That was scary. So there's been fearful things I've had to do. Teaching my first math class. Yeah, that was scary. So I just, finally what I did to combat the fear was just say, I got this. I'll figure it out. You always do. And then what it does is it puts a mental mindset, an action game in your head, and every time something comes up like that, you say, I got this. I'll figure it out. So when my boss here, Mr. Nikid, comes and asks me to do something, I go, don't worry, boss, I got it. And I may walk away going, I don't know how I got it. But I figured it out. I figure it out. And I said, if you do that enough times, there's nothing they can throw at you that you don't got. You go, I got it. I got it. And I went to a conference one time, and many of you aren't going to know who Nolan Ryan is, but he's one of the greatest pitchers of all time. 40 years old, still throwing 100 miles an hour. Now that's amazing for 40 years old. Okay? Just amazing, amazing. And he had this thing in his head where he said, I would use fear as an advantage. And I'm listening to this, and I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. He said, because what it did is it drove the energy inside of me to win. And it might, he's winning a baseball game. But it could be win just getting the project done. And getting it done where everybody looks at it and goes, wow, wow. And he said, it just worked for me. And he said, and I figured that out at a very young age. And I was just like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. So I got this. Okay. I got this, boss. Don't worry.
And jumping into self-efficacy goes into what you just said, the fear. So Albert Bandura is the theorist that created the self-efficacy. So there's 4 things that he put out there, which the first is confidence, second is self-efficacy and mastering experience, and then modeling the experience. So as I was driving over here to present for Southwest University on this presentation, fear was in me. First, because of the traffic. It was ridiculous coming over here. There was an accident that ended up it was going to delay me to be here an hour late. So I said, no, I got this. I can overcome this. So I figured out a way so I can get here on time. And then just the anxiety of, we've been isolated for almost a year. And to present in front of people, to be around other people, there was a fear there. And overcoming that, in my mind, I just kept telling myself, where do you see yourself with this presentation? What is your purpose? What is the purpose of the whole presentation? And that is to overcome the fear of every individual, my coworkers, my directors, my students, my peers, to overcome the anxiety that we've been taught through media, through people that we're so close to that are giving us guidance that they're not educated enough to be able to, but then they voice their opinion, and that's fine. It's just you, yourself, where you see yourself and where you want to be, and this is where I want to be. So that's what overcame my fear, is the purpose, and that is to be here eventually, on ground, back to normality, as normal as what we now know to be normal. But that is what overcame my ability to be here.
So there's just to finish some lyrics for John Mayer's song. I love the song. And there's a part that says, fear is a friend that is misunderstood. I think it is. So thank you for your answers. Thank you so much.
I think that's a big one too. I think that's a huge one, because it's knowing that you're your friend. You're your friend. And you always hear people say, oh, I'm my own worst friend. No. You've got to be your best friend. That breeds success.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'm going to have one more question that's kind of in line with that, but a little bit more focused on negative self-talk. So that's something that I struggle with all the time, even still. So can you guys maybe explain a little bit more what it is? Because I feel like a lot of students have that issue, and maybe techniques they can practice to get out of the habit of self-talk, negative self-talk.
I think the first thing we need to do is get away from talking about what's wrong with us. And I think everybody does that really well, and they do that, and then they convince themselves they're that person. They're that little monster inside of you, okay? That's something that needs to stop. And every day, what you need to do is every morning when you wake up and you look in that mirror, you go, I'm all right. I'm going to be okay. This is good. I'm as good as anybody else, and I'm going to prove it. But you're going to have to do it consistently. But the negative talk is going to have to stop. And that's not something that stops all at once. It's almost like an addictive behavior. It really is. And it really is an addictive behavior. Because the people that do a lot of negative self-talk do a lot of it all the time, all day, from the minute they wake up in the morning to the minute they go to bed at night, and they may even dream negative stuff, okay? So it's going to lessen as time goes on if you take that attitude. The other thing is the inactive attainment that Ms. Ileen was talking about, is getting the mastery experience. As you get through education and as you realize you can do this stuff. I can do math. I can do this. I can do projects. I can do all that. You gain the mastery. All of a sudden what happens is the negative self-talk goes away. It starts to go away. But it does take a long time. But we're going to have to get up every morning and go, I'm good. I got this. I'll be all right. And then you start from there, and then you just spread it out. Things like people will say, oh, well, I'm not good enough for him or her. Or I'm not good looking enough for him or her. Or, oh, I'll never get that job. I'm not even going to apply for it. That's negative self-talk. And you hear that from students all the time. There was a job I'd be so perfect for. I go, apply for it. And they're going, no, I'll never get it. And I go, you're right. You never will. Because you'll never apply for it. I go, what's the worst they're going to say? No? So you go on to the next one. And you just keep doing it. Eventually, the pieces will fall together. But that's where they need to start. They need to start with the negative about themselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not smart enough. All those things that people say to each other. Oh, I can't do that. Is the boss crazy? What is he doing giving me this project? That's negative self-talk within itself. And I tell students all the time, you get promoted? Being able to do projects. They give you a project, you rock and roll, and then they go, wow. So you get another one. Then you get another one. Next thing you know, you're running the department. Okay? And it happens holistically. But that's what they really need to do. And that's a daily thing. But negative self-talk isn't going to be overnight. It's not going to be the next morning you're going to wake up and go, oh, I am wonderful. And there's unicorns and rainbows. It doesn't happen like that. It's a process. And they have to practice. It's just like, everybody says, oh, Michael Jordan, he was this, he was that. You know how much he practiced? Like since he was a little kid? Yeah, he's the greatest of all time, there's no doubt. But yeah, or the Beatles, they were overnight sensation. No, they weren't. They were together for like 8 years before they even got on Ed Sullivan and did any of it. And they got turned down a lot. Yeah, because they practice and they practice. And you have to practice the positive talk. You go, oh, look what I did. Look what I did. There's a great commencement, and it's the best commencement I've ever seen. And it's an admiral doing the commencement at the University of Texas. And it's brilliant. It's on YouTube. And one of the things he says at the very end is, in the morning, when you get up, make your bed. Make your bed. First thing you do, make your bed. And if by the end of the day you've had a bad day, you can come home and say, look, I made my bed today. So it's a good day. And I was just like, wow. Yeah. So positive things, get rid of the negative things. But you have to do it every day.
So, feeding off of Dr. B, all I'm hearing is self-motivation, self-accountability. So a lot of our students, and just in general, ourselves, you just have to realize that you put yourself in this position. Nobody has asked you to be here. You're choosing a better life for yourself. So when you've chosen to come to the university to become a college student, with everything that has transitioned to what we're at right now, this is what we have. This is what we're trying to be at the best at. So now accountability has the part as the instructor to be able to be accountable to relay the information that it needs to be taught in that course and make sure that we're doing it to the best of our ability with what we have in front of us. As a student's perspective, I hear this a lot, and I've been teaching for a year online with my students that I wish all our classes would be back to ground, but we're transitioning into ground classes according to the CDC, and we want the best for our students. So with that being said, they need to be accountable for everything that they're doing on their end. If they have a checklist that this is what I tell my students, if you have a checklist every morning as to what you have to do, then there's no reason why it should not be able to be attained. Of course, life happens, your kids get sick, things happen. But that's why I have an agenda every single time I teach. I've always taught with an agenda, and they're like, oh, Miss B with her agenda. It's me personally saying, I need to do this. This is my checklist as an instructor, and I need to make sure that I do this, and I'm accountable for what I set myself up for today to be able to cover. So as a student's perspective, going into the negativity, of course, we have reasons to blame others and other things, and we're good at that. I tend to do that personally, saying, well, this didn't happen because of this, that. But if I really stop and I think about it, and I'm really honest with myself, those things the things that happen is because basically me. Those didn't get done because I didn't make the adequate enough time to be able to get the things that I said that I wanted to get done. So if I were to give my students advice, is accountability. This is not a public school. You're not in high school. We're in college now. So you need to be accountable for everything that you've already signed and stated that you want to have, because you need to see the bigger picture 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Coming back, if you're an associate, come back for your bachelor's. If you're a bachelor's, you're emailing me to figure out where you can take your master's, which is going to be Southwest University, and hopefully in the near future. But again, it comes back to accountability. And without that, then we're always going to have the reason as to why it's somebody else's reason for the fact that you're not where you're at. And you can't do that, because if that's the case, then you wouldn't be where you're at right now, because you do have accountability. So keep that in mind. And
Good. Thank you.
good.
Thank you.